Can a recharged Husker team come out and finish the season strong? Hi, I'm Aaron Muller, and this is episode 15 of the Cobsmacked Podcast. This is a Nebraska Football podcast covering the Husker season and team news as it progresses throughout the year. Every video episode is uploaded to YouTube, and the audio versions can be found on Apple, Google, and Spotify. If you enjoy the content, please consider leaving a like and following, possibly sharing it wherever you're listening. It helps me grow the podcast and helps me reach more ears. Before we get into this week's preview, I wanted to kind of fill you guys in on what's going on behind the scenes here at the house. I talked last time about possibly doing a couple bonus episodes during the bye week. Unfortunately, during that time, my grandfather passed away, and I took the time to be around my family and to spend as much time with him as possible before he passed. My grandpa Rodney Muller embodied what it meant to be a Nebraskan. He was tough and ambitious, but also loving and kind. I didn't know if I was even going to put out an episode this week. Been dealing with a lot of those emotions, but he enjoyed listening to my video pods, as he called them, so it only seemed right to honor him with this one. So this episode's going to be dedicated to the greatest storyteller of all time, and with that, we will get into this week's preview. Preview Week 9 game versus the Purdue Boilermakers. The kickoff is at 2:30 at Memorial Stadium. Weather on Saturday is supposed to be sunny, mid-60s. The wind shouldn't be a factor. It looked like it was going to be around 10 miles per hour in Lincoln, so it shouldn't play too much of a role in the game, which is good because we want to see a good showing. Purdue comes out of the Big Ten West, as we do. They are 2-2 in conference. They are led by Jeff Brom, their head coach. He is 23-28. He is in his fifth year. His record doesn't really show it with that 23-28, but Jeff Brom has really turned Purdue into kind of a sniper, if you want to look at it that way. They're very capable of being in every game that they're in, and they're very capable of knocking off big opponents. They've knocked off two top 2 teams in the last 3 seasons, Iowa being 2 weeks ago. That's something you always have to watch out for when you play Purdue. Like, you don't ever expect for them to beat you, but they are very capable of doing so. Looking at their offense, they run multiple different sets, but all of them kind of focus on the passing game. They are averaging 317.6 passing yards per game. Looking at how much they're scoring 22.1 points per game, and we're allowing 19.4 points per game. So what they're getting on offense and what we're giving up on defense is right around the same. Looking at their offense, though, we're going to look at the weaknesses first. They don't or can't really run the ball at all. Their leading running back is junior running back King Daru. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's their leading running back. He has 75 carries for 289 yards and 1 touchdown. So it's not incredible. It's not game breaking by any means. But like I said, they really focus on the passing game. Their offensive line kind of contributes to the lack of the run game, and they also are not really good at pass protection either. Similar to the Huskers offensive line, they have given up 21 sacks on the year, which is the exact same that the Huskers offensive line has given up as well. I would like to think that our number could be a lot higher if Adrian was just a statue back there, but being elusive as he is, our number could be way higher than that 21 sack mark. They do run multiple quarterbacks, though. They have a junior quarterback, Jake Plummer. He's kind of their game manager. He started the season as their starting QB1, but as a game manager, he doesn't really throw interceptions, but he's also not really pushing the ball downfield like you'd want out of a quarterback. Like I mentioned, he started at QB1, but he had an injury in there. So then Aiden O'Donnell, he's a senior quarterback, came in, and he was doing really well. He's more confident in his arm and what his arm is capable of doing, but that also caused him trouble. So he's a big reason that they were in the Iowa game and that they came out with a win on that one. But he threw 3 interceptions at Wisconsin last week. He has 8 total on the year. As I mentioned, Jake Plummer has 0. So they kind of been running with both quarterbacks, getting and taking what each one is capable of doing. One's capable of pushing the ball down the field more consistently, and the other one's kind of the game manager. Once they have the game in hand, he's the guy that can come in and keep it in check. But neither quarterback is very mobile if you look at them that way. So their offensive line's not great as ours is, but they're not able to escape the pressure like we are. So I think that's something that'll play a role in here. Their quarterbacks are aided by the star of the offense, junior wide receiver David Bell. You hear his name a lot. He seems like he's been there for a long time. He has 44 receptions, 712 yards, and 4 touchdowns this year. He's fast, agile. He's an NFL-level talent. You're going to see him on Sundays. The attention that he draws frees up other targets. So he only has the 4 touchdowns on the year, but like I said, like a lot of the attention on defense is being put on him and making sure to shut him down. So that frees up the other targets like junior tight end Payne Durham and junior wide receiver Milton Wright. You're going to hear a lot of juniors as we go through this preview. Their whole team kind of consists of juniors and they're playmakers as well. So as I mentioned, the tight end Payne Durham and junior wide receiver Milton Wright, they're combined for 600 plus yards and 6 touchdowns. So if David Bell's being shut down, then the focus gets put on other players on the offense. So either you let him catch balls and he makes the plays, or somebody else is going to do it. But they make a good effort to put the ball around to different wide receivers and different targets because they can't rely on the running game. Looking over to the defensive side of things, they run a non-traditional 3-4. They have the 3 down linemen with a nickel or a sandback, similar to how we run JoJo Doman, bringing him off the sides. They're giving up 16.3 points per game, and the Huskers are averaging 30.8 points per game on offense. So that's kind of, I think, where the game's going to be decided. If our offense is able to maintain that 30.8 points per game and they're not able to get above that 20 that they're usually getting on their offensive side of the thing, I think we have the game in hand pretty well. They did fire Bob Diaco last season. He was their old defensive coordinator. We have experience with him at Nebraska, and we don't have fond memories of him, so we can only imagine how bad it was there. But their new defensive coordinator, Brad Lambert, has brought in this, like I mentioned, non-traditional 3-4. There wasn't even really a name for it. So, like, there's 3-4, there's 4-3, there's 3-2-5, there's a bunch of different things. But it's a very, like, hybrid 3-4 that he runs. But he's really solidified the defense. He's brought in a bunch of transfers and brought in a bunch of guys that kind of fit his scheme, and just in the short time that he's been there has already solidified. There's no star area of the defense. There's no star player. There is some guys we will mention, but the whole unit as a whole, there's really no weakness that you can pick out in a kind of attack. Very similar to that, like Nebraska in that way. They do have an outstanding pass rusher and junior defensive end, George Karlaftis. He only has 2.5 sacks on the year, but the stats are really misleading there, I think. If you watch him, he's very disruptive, and he puts a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. He gets double-teamed a lot, which very similar to how David Bell opens up the offense by, if the attention's put on David Bell, the rest of the offense gets a chance to eat. George Karlaftis is the same way on the defensive side of things. If he's getting double-teamed, that frees up somebody else to be able to get a chance at the quarterback. Looking at somebody else, they have a junior safety, Cam Allen. He has three interceptions on the year. Him, along with sophomore safety Marvin Grant and senior linebacker Jalen Alexander, they are the top 3 tacklers on defense. They account for like 120 some tackles on the team. So those are names you're going to be hearing throughout the night. But as I mentioned, it's not really like there's no star players on their defense. There's no one guy that's going to stand out and just crush you on defense. But they do have a really good unit all around. Looking at their special teams, their senior kicker, Mitchell Fineran, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, he's really solid. He's made 83% of his field goals this year, and I think he's only missed 1 point after. So, like everybody else we've faced, he's been very consistent in his kicking game. Their punt side, they have a freshman punter, Jake Ansell. I believe he's also Australian. I mentioned that last time, and I thought that was funny. He has handled most of the punting duties this year, and he's averaging 39.6 average yards per punt, which isn't elite level, but it's consistently good. It's around that 40-yard mark. Keys for the game. So I think Chinator and the Black Shirts are going to have to come up with some kind of pressure, whether they dial up blitzes or whether they just kind of scheme pressure with the guys that they do bring. It's going to be a huge game for Garrett Nelson and the defensive line. If they don't have to bring extra blitzes or anything like that, I feel like with the offensive line as leaky as it is, we should be able to get home more often, especially since they are a pass-heavy team. You're going to have more time than if it was just running over and over again like we have been dealing with. As I mentioned, they tied the Huskers in sacks allowed at 21. We have Adrian Martinez. They have statues. So that's kind of where the difference is there. Adrian can take off and run if the pocket breaks down, whereas these guys are just going to have to take the sack or throw it away. So if we can disrupt the quarterbacks, if we can disrupt the quarterbacks and force turnovers, I feel like that's going to play a big role in the game. We are ahead on the turnover margin as far as the game goes. I think we're up 1 and they're down 2. As I mentioned, he threw 3 picks last week against Wisconsin. So if we can get back there and force him to make bad mistakes or just throw when he's not ready to, I feel like we have a good chance to come into that. Black Shirt secondary is also going to have to limit David Bell. So this is the second key. They're going to have to limit David Bell and the passing offense as a whole. They can't shut down David Bell, but then allow these tight ends to go across the middle or go for these short dump passes and be able to pick up first downs consistently. With Deontay Williams out, they're bringing in freshman safety Miles Farmer. we've seen him before and he's played consistently, but we will need him to play within his role. We can't allow people to beat him since he's the new guy out there. But the coaches speak very highly of him. He's been brought up multiple times during this week's press conferences, and they don't really see a drop-off with him. He's ready to play. He knows what he needs to do, and he's going to try that. Cornerbacks need to try to keep everything under them. They don't want to allow anything past them and give up big explosive plays, and because Purdue cannot run. So if we can force them to keep these passing games to a limit, keep them short, keep them not moving very much, the running game isn't going to bail them out. So the longer you can hold these cornerbacks, put pressure on these wide receivers, give them no room to get open, then the quarterback's going to have to hold the ball longer, which is going to give the pass rush more time to get home, which is kind of the first key that we touched on. So looking at the third key, we can't do one of these without mentioning the offensive line on Nebraska. So establishing the run will take precedence this week over the pass protection. Typically, it's the offensive line needs to protect Adrian. I do still think that's the case, but I think that the run's going to be more important in this game. If we can establish that, it will open the playbook. It'll allow us to run that option that we didn't really get a run last game. It just gives Frost and Lubick more options to move the football on the offensive side of things. Adrian was a little banged up, and we didn't get to see the option because of that, but hopefully since the bye week happened, we will be a little more rejuvenated. Looking at the final prediction, the spread on the game is favoring Nebraska by 7.5 right now. I think it opened at 7, might have opened at 5 in some places, but currently sitting around 7.5. I think that's a fairly good range there. 7.5 is a good number for this game. Over and under is 52.5. I predict the score to be around a 38-21 Nebraska game. So looking back at the season, I think that the Illinois game was a rusty game for us. We came in and we weren't really ready to play in week 0. Minnesota, we were a physically worn out team. But those 6 games in between, those games 2 to 7, were a better baseline for the Husker team than I think we've seen. The first game, obviously, was a big letdown. The last game was a big letdown. But all those games in the middle, you can be super proud of how the team has played. And I think that the fact that we had to play 8 straight games, there's not a whole lot of teams that had to do that, let alone couple that with the schedule that we've been running. We've been going up against a lot of top 10, top 15 teams and a lot of big teams, big physical teams. So I think that the schedule coupled with that long stretch is really taking a toll on the team. But if you look at the games 2 to 7, then that's kind of the real true Nebraska football team that we can look at. Adrian was noticeably dealing with an injury, and he severely limited the offensive capability against Minnesota. Hopefully the team as a whole gets a chance to rejuvenate and recharge and refocus during the bye week. Austin Allen mentioned that during that first week of the bye week, they worked on fundamentals again, kind of like a refocusing of your efforts. And he liked how that refocused the guys and they got fired up again. He said that they're ready to go play. They're ready to rip somebody's head off. So that's always positive. I mean, not really positive, but it's nice to hear from your team. I do think Purdue is a great matchup for the Huskers as well to come out of a bye week. The offensive line that we're going up against in Purdue is a step down from what we've played against the last 2 games. They have come off of 2 hard games against Iowa and Wisconsin. They did beat number 2 Iowa, but Iowa's a big physical team, both on offense and defense, and Wisconsin's the same way. So they are coming off of 2 brutal physical games, and we get to have that week of rest. So we should be coming into this one a little fresher than they are. Their one-dimensional offense should also give the Blackshirts the advantage in the game. So we need to come out with this win. Every game seems to be the same way that we need to win this game, but this one specifically, there's a little more motivation there. If you can go in and win this game, then that kind of helps you to roll momentum into the rest of the season. If you can win against Purdue, you need to win against Purdue. Then that leaves Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Iowa. You need to win 2 of those. Ohio State's going to be a tough one to push out there, but if we can roll into Wisconsin off of another bye week, Wisconsin and Iowa, and knock those 2 off, then I like our chances to get to a bowl game this year. That's going to wrap up this week's preview. Otherwise, we will be back here on Sunday for a recap of the game. Do you think the Huskers will come out on fire, or is it going to be another letdown? Leave me a comment below or let me know on Twitter at the Cobsmacked Pod. But until next time, go Big Red.